Hmm. We need to put something in front. Maybe I'll hold up a card that says Pop's Collection while you're doing the thing, or go back and forth with it. I don't know.
All right, greetings and welcome to Pop's Collection, where we dissect and reflect on a movie or TV show from my Pop's Collection. I'm Ron Tweedy, joining me as Pops, and today we're going to be talking about Logan.
Yes, not Logan's Run, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good.
I watched the right movie this time.
All right, very good. Yes. Well, Logan's Run is a good movie, but
Yeah,
way before your time, and special effects would just blow you away.
yeah, I'm sure.
Not.
Speaking of which, this movie, for it to being a superhero movie, this is very light on the special effects. At least I'd say unrealistic special effects, right?
Yeah, not so much. Basically, the claws and some of the mutant stuff that's being done. But other than that, I'd have to say, really, maybe some of the stunts, but most of the action scenes are actually done with stuntmen, and it's not really any CG or any type of special effects on some of that stuff. So
Yeah, this movie is definitely, I think, one of the most unique movies that we've looked at. And to me, the weird thing about it is that it breaks almost all of the rules of what you would normally look for a film like this, and yet still one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. So
yes, as a matter of fact, it's very thought provoking, uh, emotionally. It hits all the marks, the roller coasters from your highs to your lows,
yeah,
to your happy points, your funny points, your very deeply sad points in there in a lot of this movie.
yeah.
And I don't know, you could almost call this Logan, or AKA Diary of a Limousine Driver. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
You know, uh, interesting story. This actually, the director, James Mangold,
Right.
this was based on a story that he wrote.
Okay.
He was one of the co-writers of the screenplay, but it was based on a story that he had written.
Right.
So I thought that rather interesting, especially after he directed the last movie, The Wolverine.
Yeah.
For him to direct this, it's almost like uh, the answer or the conclusion of the story that he wanted to tell, maybe, I think.
The thing that gets me about this is that we talked about last time we recorded, we covered the Wolverine, which was also directed by him, like you said. The interesting thing to me is how incredibly faithful that movie was to the source material. Like, I mean, it like we talked about this. If you read the Logan miniseries and also the surrounding X-Men books that were happening around the same time, it was extremely faithful to it. The only thing different was that instead of taking place in the early 80s, it was taking place in the 2000s, which, to me, they handled that very well. But the thing about this movie is that there is precedent for it in the comics. There's been two different runs of a book called Old Man Logan, where it theorizes what would an old man Wolverine look like and what is he dealing with and things like that. But that's where it departs. It's completely different from that one. I mean, part of it has to do with rights issues, obviously, because this was still a Fox film and they weren't bought by Disney yet. So one of the big antagonists in the Old Man Logan book is the Hulk family. So that they couldn't obviously use them because Hulk being owned by, I think, Universal or Paramount at the time. They couldn't.
Right.
So they couldn't really use the story, but even despite that, this movie, the story on it is amazing. I mean, it's, yeah. So,
Yes, I have to say it's incredible. And one of the things that I really kind enjoyed about this,
mhm.
knowing that, well, let's see, the release date was in Berlin, it was February 17th, but
Yeah,
March 3rd in the US,
yeah,
uh, 2017. And this story took place in 2029.
yes, that's the other thing.
So the way that they told the story, you know, a lot of times when you see a story that's supposed to be futuristic,
Yep.
the buildings, the cars, you know, all the different things, they've like made them so outrageously
Yeah.
out of context. Whereas a story like this, here we are in 2021.
Right. We're a third of the way there.
And I think that we could probably, at 2029, it might be pretty realistic to that time frame.
Yeah, that to me, that's the thing that gets me about this film is how realistic this superhero film is. It like you said, you really can foresee 2029 looking exactly like that with the same level of technology, the same things going on. And we'll get to those, I guess, as we get into the story. But to me, I mean, that uh I think that's going to age very well. It's
Well,
fascinating.
yes, the limousine, the town car,
Yeah,
the way that they design that,
right.
it looks like probably that might be what the changes are, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's just different enough to think, yeah, this is, I guess 12 years in the future from when we're actually seeing it originally.
Correct. Right. But now we're like even closer,
Yeah.
you know, now we're 7 years away. I'm sorry, 8 years away,
Right. Like I said, we're a third of the
2020.
way there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're almost there. What I thought was interesting about this is that where we started
Yeah.
and the fact that he was in the back of the limousine,
Right.
and we see that kind of he's aging, and we don't quite know it yet, but he doesn't, he's not able to heal like he used to, and he's not this cocky, mean guy that he used to be. He's
Oh,
trying
he's
to
still plenty
deal
mean.
with,
He's
oh,
still plenty.
yes. But when the confrontation starts,
Yes.
he's like, you know, you guys should just like go, you know, leave now,
Well,
you know,
the fact
instead
that he
of
was more,
going at it full bore,
yeah.
you know?
Well, and the fact that he was more concerned about, stripping the chrome plating off the lug nuts, I thought that was kind of funny. He's got other priorities, obviously, which is kind of,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, it's like what we talked about in Winter Soldier and Falcon.
Yeah.
How to how does a superhero make his money? You know, and in this case,
Yeah.
he's a limo driver.
Right. Right. And up until then, obviously, I believe most of the funding for the X-Men came from the schooling part of it. So, the fact that Charles Xavier had money to start with helps.
Yes, and we don't know how he got it, but we do know that he did get it. One other interesting thing about this, and I'm not positive
Mhm.
about today, but at the time of this film's release,
Yeah.
uh, it was the third highest grossing R-rated film
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
So that says a lot for that.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, the only real, I do think that an R rating would be appropriate for the film. But like even besides the brief nudity that's there, which I think was completely unnecessary, I think the level of violence and you know, uh, grittiness and gore in there was actually something that would be helpful for young men to see. Not necessarily because it doesn't glorify it. It's in a way, yeah, it's not glorifying at all. And we see what happens to our hero at the end. It's not a happy ending for him, in some ways. So
Yes, in quite a few ways.
yeah,
What I thought was interesting, though, the character of Laura
yes,
that character is also in the X-Men Wolverine animated series.
yeah. Actually, I was going to show you a picture of it because she is kind of like Harley Quinn in a way, because her first appearance was not in a comic; it was in the cartoon X-Men Evolution, like you just said. So,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
let me share that. Just show you our viewers. So those of you watching on YouTube or on Facebook, you could see here that this was her original character design, very faithful. She has the feet claws and the two claws in the hands. So anyway,
Yes.
interesting.
Right. First X-Men Evolution and then later in X-Men Wolverine animated series,
Yeah,
which was a later one. But in that one, there was more than one Laura
yeah,
at the time. So,
and from a comic appearance, the first time she shows up, there was a book called NYX, and it was kind of like this, kind of retelling in the early 2000s of New Mutants, essentially. Not the New Mutants, but that's a different thing. But yeah, we get to see her, but she doesn't actually get her origin story until her own book X-23 a little bit later, and it's pretty faithful to the story here. Uh, Dr. Rice plays an important role in her origin in the book as well. So we get to see that. And, like I said, it's interesting, how all that works together.
well, in this story, the year, like I said, 2029,
Right.
and what we kind of know is that based on what we've been told, it's been 25 years since there's been a mutant born.
Yeah. Which is really interesting. That's a year after the events of the Last Stand. And it's, according to some of the things that I read, this actually takes place in the timeline after things were corrected in Days of Future Past. So, there must have been some sort of incident in 2004 somewhere where no more mutants are being born. And, I think they explain a little bit of that a little bit later, how they were able to accomplish that. But to me, I think that's really a fascinating thing to think about, that you have, these people who are kind of the last of their kind. And
Yes, and there's, based on what we see, there's only three,
yes,
true mutants. Well, if you want to go there in Last Stand, they did find a drug,
right.
right? So it could be that, and I'm just speculating that there were a lot of people lined up to take that drug.
Right. But
And
that still wouldn't solve the problem of new mutants being born
well,
unless some
yes,
sort of vaccination, which
right,
they talk about.
exactly. Right, which they did not talk about, but I mean, we could speculate that it could be part of
Yeah.
a prenatal thing.
Well, yeah, I think there's actually there's more of an explanation later on, which we'll get to, that explains a couple different things. But
Okay, all right,
well,
we can go there. Anyway, so we started. I'm thinking we're in California.
no, it's Texas,
It's Texas. Oh, that's right,
right on the
Texas.
border. Yeah,
Right, and we get a very graphic fight scene,
right.
and Logan gets shot.
Yeah.
But he doesn't heal as quickly as he does
Right, we're
before.
actually watching the process of him healing at a bathroom, gas station bathroom, and it looks really painful. You can definitely tell that this particular version of Logan is really, really old, and things are not working the way they used to work, which is something that we're not used to seeing for any superhero, let alone one that has supernatural healing abilities.
Right. And knowing that, we've gone from Origins where he's been through
Yeah.
multiple wars.
Right.
Then the second movie, he goes through the bombing of Hiroshima,
Right.
and he survives an atomic blast, and now he gets shot with a shotgun, and
Yeah.
so he's not going to live forever, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think we get a little bit more indication of what's actually happening to him later on, but we'll get to that, as we come along.
Right. And I think that might have something to do with what happened.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
but one thing I did not mention before we started talking about this is that, I've seen this a couple times now, and on the Blu-ray version that I have, they actually have the Logan Noir version. I don't know if you know about that.
I'm not familiar with that.
So there was a special 1 day screening when it came out about premiering Logan in black and white. And so that came out as a second disc on the Blu-ray. So we watched it in black and white this time.
And
It was pretty cool. We watched other black and white movies for this podcast. Semi black and white with Sin City. So it wasn't outside of it. Obviously it wasn't shot with being black and white being the intended version of it, but all in all, it still was pretty cool. It only took me out of the film towards the end with the final fight, but I'll talk more about that when we get there. But
okay.
it was really cool, and I think the violence, it's different when you have it in black and white.
Yes, yes. I'm going to say that it's probably somewhat toned down from because you're not getting the gore that you would get otherwise.
Yeah, it's like the movie Kill Bill when they get to the scene where she's fighting all the
Oh,
ninjas,
yes,
and
yes. The
it goes into black
100.
and white. Yeah, it goes into black and white because that was the way they could keep the R rating instead of it being NC-17. So
Right, right. Well, and I'm going to just ask you this because, maybe the technology has changed, but I recall
Mhm.
way, way, way back in the 70s or 80s. I think might have been the 80s. We went to Universal
Mhm.
and we went to the place where they had done the screening of Psycho.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they had said that Alfred Hitchcock used chocolate for the blood because the color red didn't show up real good on the blood of
Yeah.
it wouldn't show up. So in your black and white version,
Yeah.
how was it? I mean, was it,
That was
did
fine.
you,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I know what you're talking about. I know they mentioned that at Universal, and I don't remember the reason for it. If it was it was because of an aesthetic thing, or if it was for a consistency thing. The consistency,
right,
or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I didn't see any difference with the blood. It was just some of the dialogue that specifically refers to some like color stuff that kind of takes you out of it. So
right. Well, the only reason I mention that is because, again, we did Sin City,
yep,
and when they had those situations,
yeah,
it was colorized.
it was. Yeah, you're right.
So I was just curious since
Yeah,
this was a noir version. So, anyways, um, so we kind of have that confrontation,
right.
and uh, we kind of get the idea that Logan's done this many times over because he's doing his gig, and then when he heads back, he goes across the border to Mexico. It's
Yeah,
almost like he looks at the guy and it's like, yeah, it's me. Okay, go. You
Yeah.
know, I don't need to see your papers, you know.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting that
Right.
he's also, I think he's taking a more responsible role.
Mhm.
Whereas back in the X-Men days, Xavier was like his father figure.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Now he's becoming the father figure.
Well, I mean that's just the nature of things. You know that well, it used to be, I should say. Um, you know, at the end of the day, how it's designed, how the family is designed, is that children are an investment, right? Because
Yes.
there wasn't such the state was not involved in people as they aged. It was how good did you treat your children till they can take care of you? How good did you take care of them so that then when you're old they can take care of you?
Right. Well, that's biblical too.
Well, 100%. That's what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
and so what we're just seeing, that's
Come to fruition then.
right. It's just a family thing. The fact is that we have uh one of the most powerful mutants with his brain, a telepath, has some sort of degenerative disease, and
Yes, I think they said Alzheimer's maybe or
it,
dementia.
that's the thing about this film is that a lot of this stuff is speculation. They throw out things here and there, and you kind of have to draw your own conclusions. But yeah, I would say something like that. And ALS they mentioned as well. So there's all kinds of things that it could
Right.
be.
They mentioned more than one. That's true.
Yeah,
That
and that's one thing I think the movie does well. It doesn't actually answer all your questions. It kind of just gives you, it lays it out there, because that in reality that's the case. You just don't know. But anyway, it only makes sense that the risk that Xavier poses, that one of the strongest X-Men, is there to take care of him. It makes perfect sense to me.
right. And we meet another mutant too.
Caliban, yep.
Yes, who is a tracker, a mutant tracker.
Yeah, so Caliban is he actually showed up in the early 80s in the X-Men book, and he's what they call the Morlocks. Those are a group of mutants that we haven't talked a lot about them. They haven't featured prominently in any of the films, and I do think that there's actually a really interesting film that you could make out of Morlocks, and a couple of different parallels you could draw with certain things. But anyway, the Morlocks are mutants that don't look like they're human. They look like monsters. And so Caliban is one of them. He has more vampire slash, orc-like features in the comics. And, his first appearance is he senses other mutants. That's his power. He can, like you said, he can sense other mutants. And so he kidnaps Kitty Pryde and wants to take her with him so they'll have a friend. And so obviously they intervene at the last moment, and he realizes that it was wrong to kidnap somebody, and so he goes off into the sewers. But that's kind of his first appearance as Caliban. So his powers is very faithful to his powers in the book. So
Okay. Well, that it's interesting that you say that, because I guess it was in the I'm going to guess the second movie, maybe
Mhm.
or the third movie, The Last Stand.
Yeah.
There was a girl that could sense other mutants, almost
Yeah.
like Xavier's
Yep.
uh, um, cybernetic chamber
Right.
that he had.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Could she have been a Morlock? Maybe, I don't know,
Well, typically you can tell them when you see them.
because they look
They're freakish looking. They're
different.
a bunch of freaks. Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, kind of like uh, Mystique, maybe because you could
Sure.
tell what she looks
But
definitely
she
if
can
she
change her appearance,
decided.
though. It's not the same. It's a little bit different than
That's
that.
true. That is true. So we head to Mexico, and we meet Caliban,
Yep.
and Xavier's in this like huge container all by himself.
Hmm.
And like you said, we finally see why Logan is taking care of him, because when he starts having these seizures, it's
Yeah.
almost impossible, to get to him,
Yeah.
but Logan seems to be the only one that can get to him. It takes him some time to get there, but he's able to do it.
Right. And, this is another thing that I'll say about the film is that the performances that we get out of both Hugh Jackman and Sir Patrick Stewart, I mean, it's just it's some of the best acting ever. I mean, just particularly Patrick Stewart, being a doddering old man, and sometimes he's incoherent, sometimes he's extremely lucid. That, I mean, it's just an amazing performance. And the thing is that that's the other part of the R rating, is that both of these old men sound like really old men. I mean, just lots of foul language, and that's reality. And I don't know, they just do an amazing job, both of them.
Yes, and I just have to say that as an old man myself, when we're doing our show, I have done my very best to curb my language. And
Well,
so
yeah.
I'm sure you would have bleeped it out if I have ever said anything that wasn't the right thing to say.
No, I think yeah, we're pretty good. But as you get older, and as life kind of weighs on you, it can be tough. Because that's the other thing that we see at this point, is that the life goal for Logan at this point is doing that work, saving up enough money so he can buy a boat, and that he and Charles can go out to sea. So that way he won't be a danger to anybody else, and Logan can there is at least a suggestion that he's planning to kill himself while he's out there on the boat with an adamantium bullet.
Yes, we do kind of get that thought there. But I would assume that it would be the end for both of them,
Yeah.
and while they
Right.
were out there. But
Right.
what I thought was kind of interesting was that it's as if I were in that situation and you were taking care of me,
Right.
So I mean, it's just the way that they acted those parts. It was, like you said, an incredible acting job.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that they didn't, they should have gotten, some accolades for that.
Yeah. Well, I think they did get some accolades. Let's see. I was just going to take a look here. I do think that they actually it did get a nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay for
Yes,
an Academy Award. So I mean that's saying something for a superhero movie.
true. But we did get this situation, and then after he straightens it out, he goes back to work.
Yeah.
And we get this montage of all these different
Right.
jobs that he's doing.
Right.
And we get a funeral, and then we meet another character,
Right.
Gabriella.
Right. Yeah. And this is where the film actually kind of picks up, and, we probably should pick up the pace as well. But yeah, basically,
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm been
No,
rattling.
she's, she is offering Logan like a really big score. Like, she's offering to pay him $40,000, which is almost exactly the amount that he needs to buy his boat, to transport her and this young lady to North Dakota.
Yes, North Dakota.
Yeah.
And we learned some more about that too. Now that also is an interesting story too.
Right.
In the comics, but
well,
yeah, we'll get there. Yes.
So he totally blows her off at first, and we find out that there's another person looking for them, and I think his name's Pierce, and he's a cyborg. He's
Yeah,
got
Donald Pierce.
right, and so he's a bounty hunter. He's trying to find them, and of course Logan doesn't want to get involved. He just wants to, make his money, and so he could go with Xavier away from all this, and just put an end to it. But that doesn't end up happening. So he has a change of heart once he realizes that this might be the way for them to actually get it done fast, as opposed to him, nickel and diming, for the next, 5 years or whatever. He realizes that it's not going to last a lot. He's finding out that the medicine that, Charles is taking, it's not as
Isn't
effective.
working.
Right. It's not as
Yes.
effective. And so, anyway, he decides to go ahead and do it. He goes and meets Gabriella, and he finds out that the, person that he needs to take is, she says to him, hey, this is actually, we just escaped from this lab. She's, I don't know if he actually explains everything at that point.
No. She has it on her phone,
Right.
and we don't get the total
Right.
story, the origin,
Right.
until after he comes back to get her.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, he comes back. When he does come back, she's not there, and the lady's dead. And so he takes the money. It has the coordinates of where he was supposed to take her, and then it has her phone. Like, he has her phone, right? And then he drives back to Mexico and just find out that she's stowed away in the trunk. And it turns out that she's the person that Xavier claims he's been talking to telepathically the whole time. And they just thought he was, part of the dementia or whatever. And so it turns
Right.
out it actually was a real thing. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, yes. And again, acting.
Yeah.
The girl that played Laura
Uh-huh.
did an excellent job also.
Yeah.
And for a little actress of her age,
Yeah.
she did a lot of her own stunts too, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And her acting was, she didn't speak in the beginning.
Yeah, not so very good. So
yeah, so wow, what
Yeah.
she was able to portray without opening her mouth was incredible.
Yeah, I agree. But the guys show up looking for her, and they have a crazy escape, and Logan finally decides to do it. They find out, like you said, they find out her origin, that she is technically his daughter. They used his stem cells, this company did, and used it to create her. And they were using some illegal or unethical, I should say, I don't know if there was illegal or not, unethical means of reproducing these children to make these mutants. And so she's one of them. She has his DNA, and so very much, she's pretty much his daughter essentially. And that's
Yes, and they were those. It was an experiment that they were trying to design super soldiers, pretty much.
It was, they wanted to weaponize mutants, and they figured the best way to do that was to, grow them in a lab, and, have them as children, raise them to use their powers and whatnot. But it turns out that they found a better way. They don't really come out with what that better way was until we find out what it was halfway through the movie.
Yes.
But yeah, so it caused everything to be destroyed. And so these nurses that were taking care of these kids, they realized that, hey, we got to save them. And so they all left and scattered, and they all are going to regroup in Eden. That's what the plan is. And so he finds all this out, and then he sees the coordinates. They happen to be the same exact coordinates in a comic book.
Yes, an X-Men comic.
So this is another thing that the movie does that kind of breaks all of the rules in two ways. The first thing is that, like, it's self-aware in that, these X-Men comics exist in that world as well as our world, which is kind of strange.
Yes.
And then secondarily is that the comic that they show is not a real comic.
Well, it's a real comic to them.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, so I'll let me show my screen again, because I think that this will be a good illustration. So this is the cover of the comic X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 117. This is suddenly Sauron. This is the actual comic in the movie. And if you look here, the actual Uncanny X-Men 117 looks nothing like it. So,
but they're real close.
well, actually, not. I mean, the colors I think actually are extremely accurate. They did a really good job, but you can tell just the way Wolverine is drawn and some of the other things. Like, it's definitely a different artist. This is definitely,
Oh,
a lot.
yes.
So I don't know. To me, typically you want to stay really faithful to the material, and they completely made something up for the film. And like I said, normally that's a sign for disaster, but in this movie it works. It's crazy.
Right. I thought it was real interesting. It's not unprecedented.
Yeah.
There was a television series, I think it was called The Cape or something.
Okay.
And the whole series was based on a character that evidently there was a comic called The Cape.
Uh-huh.
And, I had to really look into that and say, oh, wow, is that something? Is there really a comic? But no, there's not a real comic. But this
Mhm.
the whole series was based on that. Oh, this is a comic book character that actually came to life.
Yeah.
That he's actually somebody, and there really was a cape that could do this thing and that thing or whatever it was.
Right.
So it's not unprecedented that somebody made up a comic book to make up a show.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. To me, I think what's unprecedented about it is that you have things you could have pulled from and you didn't, which is very different than what normally happens. But yeah, so he finds that out. They're on their way. They stop in Vegas. I think it's Vegas, right? It looks like Vegas.
Yes.
And they're gonna hide out for just a day there, and so they're staying in the hotel. They buy new clothes, so they're watching. I think the movie is Shane, which is
That's
a
correct. Yes.
1953 Western, and so it obviously that plays a little bit more into the overall story, because in pretty much every respect, this is a modern day Western film. So
Yes.
you have that. Uh, Logan goes to buy a new truck because obviously the one they're in is really jacked up.
Right. And he did tell her, Laura, to make sure he takes his medicine every 2 hours.
Right. Which,
Doesn't happen.
Well, after he gets the truck back, he comes back and realizes. Now, to me, this is the thing that I'm thinking about is that there's two different kinds of medicine that he's taking, right? He's taking pills, and then when he has episodes like that, he gets an injection, right?
Yes.
So my thought is when Logan gets there finally with all the shaking or whatever going on, all of the bad guys are there, and they have guns pulled on both Laura and the professor. So
Yes.
I'm thinking, did he trigger that event in order to save them, right? And if so,
Possible.
what do the pills do that? What did the pills do? And so I think actually the pills are doing something different. So
Okay.
anyway,
Well, I think the injection calms him down.
right.
So, but I thought it was kind of interesting that he now has this opportunity, as difficult as it is. We've already been through this scene where everybody in the casinos all at a standstill.
Yeah.
And everywhere he goes, everything is at a standstill. Somehow, miraculously, the elevator works.
Yeah.
And
well,
he gets up there, right?
Well, I think this is. I think that you bring up an interesting point, because what is happening, I think, when Charles has these episodes, it's basically, we've seen this before in all these other movies where he will want to reach out to somebody, and everybody else around them is frozen. Do you remember that? Like he does it all
Yes,
the time,
that's
like
true.
when they're in the airport or whatever. So
That's true.
his abilities are just freezing other people around them. So it's only affecting people. It's not affecting, mechanical stuff.
Okay,
So
I got
I,
you. I'll go with that.
so I think that that's definitely, a good in movie explanation of that. Cause I could definitely see that. So like you said, they barely escape, barely survive that. They get out and they're on the road. And to me, this is where we get that other part of the realistic future thing going on. We have a bunch of trucks on the highway that are not, they don't have any drivers, you know?
No, no, they don't. Which, yeah, I thought that again, it was an interesting concept. And I guess, I mean, that would be a believable thing maybe in 2029 because before this or during while this movie was made,
Yeah.
weren't they attempting to make cars that didn't require drivers?
Oh, they have them now. That
Yes, but
they're
did they have them back then in 2017?
yeah, they did. They were in the
Okay.
testing. They were in the testing phase, but you
Okay,
know,
so the directors and the writers made the assumption that by 2029 they'll be successful in doing that.
yeah. And I think there's a lot of credence to that. I do see that happening, particularly as particularly over the past year, how we've completely um, depended on more of trucking and everything, deliveries and stuff like that, as opposed to us going out to shops and stuff like that. There's going to be an increased demand for trucking, and it's going to be more cost efficient for large companies to say, you know what, it's easier to invest in a robot one time than to have a human being sitting in a truck, over a course of 20, 30 years or whatever. So anyway, uh, we're closer there, I think, than we are away from it at this point.
Yes, well, I think that that's a uh, very valid reason.
Yeah,
We have friends that live across the street from us. He's 70 years old and still driving a semi
right,
at 70.
right.
So,
Yeah.
uh, you know, like you say, robot would be a lot cheaper, wouldn't have to stop. Basically stop the fuel.
Yep.
You
Except,
know,
in this case, it almost runs two people off the road, right? Two families.
correct. Yes,
So we get
a
introduced.
family with horses.
Yeah, we get introduced to the Munsons,
Yes.
and so this to me, I think, is the most interesting part of the film is this interaction that they have with the Munsons, and some of the extra world building they do here is, I think, the most dystopian and concerning thing that is completely 100% plausible today. So these folks, the Munsons, are farmers somewhere, obviously between Vegas and North Dakota. We're not know exactly where, but they have a farm, and they have this dinner with Logan and the professor and Laura, and they're just they're saying that they're a family, father and son and granddaughter, and you just get these really acting wise amazing performances. It's like you get this range of first they're just terrible old men being nasty to each other, and now they're being like really sweet to each other, and yeah, it's great. And so, but anyway, we find out that there is this large agricultural corporation that turns off their water. And so, um, you know, um, Will, who is the father, um, he goes, Logan goes and helps him turn the water back on. And it turns out it's the goons from the company that are trying to get it. But what he says to Logan is, I think, the most interesting thing, in that they're going through the cornfields that are managed by this giant company. You have these giant robots that are harvesting the corn, and he says something to the effect that this corn is being transformed into high fructose corn syrup, and it's getting put into drinks and food products that literally has some type of um, psychotropic effect on people. Um, and so that to me is the explanation of why there hasn't been any mutants for 25 years, is that there's something in this food, the food supply is affecting the way people their germline, and so they've kind of eliminated the possibility for mutants being born in the wild. So that's my theory as to why it's happening. And at the same time, it's telling that he said it's also kind of, it has like antidepressants in it. It makes people feel, just whatever. And it's like affecting, all those things. And to me, I really think that is actually more of a plausible thing that we could see in the near future, to my disappointment. And I don't want that to be true, but I can definitely see that being true.
Well, we do know that nowadays that they are cross-pollinating, and they're making vegetables, and designing them differently, some of them.
Well,
So yeah, sure.
we've been doing that as as mankind. We've been doing that for, since the garden, probably. There's been some sort of genetic modification. It's just now we're doing it in a lab. And the question is,
How far are they going to go with it?
yeah, that's my point, is that, basically with the Green Revolution in the 1960s and 70s, we were able to, you know, world hunger has been, we made a tremendous strides in feeding, 7 billion people. We are, and it's because of the work done in labs with the high yield crops and stuff like that, that we've been able to do that. The question is, like you said, is that is there a possibility for you to do other things just besides growing, more and higher quality food? And the answer is, is it possible to incorporate some antidepressants in there? What would it look like? What kind of an effect that would have on a population where you're getting a low dose antidepressant every time you sip a Coke or whatever,
I think that is highly possible.
And the other thing, just, as a person who advocates for a low carb lifestyle, I do think that, we are in a novelty environment, and that, we're not used to seeing this much sugar, and so, it's just, I think it's one step removed from, what else can they put in the sugar to start controlling people, you know?
Well, I find that pretty interesting. I did get one of my friends on Facebook had sent me a little message that somebody had put out that said Coke
Mhm.
was not doing well
Yeah.
financially,
Hmm.
and this guy's message was, "Keep it up, guys. Drink water, not Coke."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, let's face it. If you're drinking water, I guess, I mean, as long as it's not flavored water, I'd imagine that's okay, right?
Well, it depends on what you're putting in it. But, at the end of the day, and it's not to say that we're anti soft drinks. It's just, drinking them on a regular basis is it can build up to really negative health effects, as I can personally attest to. So that's, I think, the big thing. But yeah, anyway, that was, to me, I think that's kind of the most interesting thing in this movie that's going on from a futuristic standpoint. What's, there and what's not. And I think it does explain a lot of the way the world is in that world. The fact is that, things are being,
Okay.
not on the surface, you can't tell, but, it has an effect. And
Well, that was a nice little side jaunt that you did.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought that was good.
yeah.
Definitely.
So they're going to fix the water. Obviously the goons show up, and Logan fights them off pretty handedly. And before they get back, we are led to believe that Xavier thinks Logan is back, and he tries telling him, just saying, "Hey, this is an amazing day. It feels like we were a family again. And, he makes a really interesting message about the Westchester incident. So that's another thing. It's not completely explained to us, but obviously there was an incident that Charles is responsible for that killed a lot of the X-Men in Westchester, which is where the school is. And he basically says, "Yeah, I know that's why you drugged me, so I forget about it, but I remembered. I remember it all, and it's I don't deserve this." And then we find out that it's not Wolverine who's there; it's actually somebody that looks like him, but it's not him. So
No, and that was really interesting the way they did different hair
yeah,
and made him a lot younger.
yep.
And I thought built a lot, more. I felt like he was more buffed up. So
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was a CG version or if he played both parts. Hugh Jackman played both parts. I don't know.
He definitely did. I know. I forget where I read it, but I did read somewhere that to do his scenes where he didn't have a shirt on, he had to literally go on a 48-hour water fast where he wouldn't even drink water. He'd be completely dehydrated to look the way he looked. And I don't know if it was for the X-24 version of him or if it was for the Logan version of him. You could go either way, really.
Yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, it's interesting that you make that comment. I thought, but yeah, we get an excellent fight scene here,
Yeah.
and
And a
it's
very tragic one. I mean, like everybody pretty much dies except for, Laura and Logan.
that's true. That's
So
true. And I thought that when the very first time I saw that, I thought it was more of a vision that
yeah.
Xavier was kind of envisioning that happening.
Yeah, in a PG-13 movie, it would be that. But because it's an R-rated movie, they can get away with, killing off characters in that, terrible way. Because it's the movie plays with your emotions and that it gives you this really positive high after they had that wonderful dinner and interaction, and you feel even more accomplished that Logan's kind of solved this problem for the Munsons, by telling the guys to go away. And then it all just gets dragged out from under you, completely. It really takes you by surprise. Any other superhero movie, like you said, it would be it couldn't have been actually what's happening in the story.
Right. And what I thought was interesting
Uh-huh.
was that the father, Munson,
Yeah,
he kind of survives the attack
he does. Yep.
and he shoots him, the X, what is X-39?
24.
24?
Yeah.
Okay. He shoots him with a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of looks at Logan and he pulls the trigger on Logan.
Yeah, he would have shot Logan too at the same time if he didn't run out of ammo. Yeah.
And here we had that thing where they were friendly together. He was thankful for his help,
Yeah.
and then lost everything. And it's all your fault.
Well, yeah, it is funny because you can think about it. It's like, oh yeah, ultimately it is. If they didn't take them in and join them for dinner, obviously those guys wouldn't have shown up, and his family wouldn't have died.
Right.
That's obvious. But what's not as clear is that if, let's just say, they didn't stop to help the horses, what would have happened? Would they have gotten run over by those trucks? Would the family get run over by the trucks? If Logan wasn't there when he went to go try to put the water back on, what would those guys have shot Will Munson? We don't know. That's the thing.
No.
So it's like, very rarely does a movie say, play with those counterfactuals in a very messy way. And I'm saying that in a good way, that, a lot of times it's clear, oh yeah, they wouldn't have experienced this if it wasn't for this. In this case, it's not as clear, saying they still could have befallen some sort of terrible tragedy, even if Logan wasn't there. So
That's true.
yeah.
Yes. So we now have just Laura and Logan heading
Right,
to.
Xavier. Yeah, Xavier is dead, perforated by X-24, and Caliban, who was captured and used to track them down, kills himself to, like throw some grenades to kill, not kill, but kill some, but not, and hurt others.
Right. He was trying to get rid of Pierce, and there was somebody else with him, and there was also. There's somebody's son, right? Is it his son or his grandson? The doctor.
I don't think.
Well, we find later that he's somehow related to Stryker.
No.
He's
No.
related to somebody. Who is he related to?
No, you're right. Pierce, yeah, Xander Pierce, his father worked on the Weapon X program with Stryker.
Okay.
And when Wolverine escaped, he killed Pierce.
Killed his father.
Yes.
Right.
So
okay.
So he has it out for Logan because of that. And so, the X-24 that he's created specifically is going to, that it's kind of like getting his revenge on the original Logan, and so that's his motivation.
Yes, I'm trying to remember, but I think the name of his company, Alkali, is in the name of the company, right?
Right.
Transigen or something.
Yeah.
Alkali Transigen, if I'm not, something like that.
Yeah. Let me see.
But
Transigen's the name of the company.
Okay. All right. But I know that it somehow got related to that.
Yeah.
All right. So, but now we think, okay, X-24 is gone, and we'll get Logan and Lara all hit the road.
Yeah. So you're right. They bury Charles. Wolverine just getting frustrated. He collapses in the middle of the road. Lara steals another truck, brings him to a local place, to get taken care of. And the doctor has a very interesting conversation with Logan, saying, "Hey, I know what you are, and you have some really chronic problems. You probably should get some examinations done. I can maybe help you out with that." And Logan says, "I know what's killing me." And that's it. Thank you. I'm out of here.
Right. He still doesn't tell us what's killing him, but we have some idea, right?
Yeah. So I think it's like again, it's still ambiguous, but I think the most likely what's happening is adamantium poisoning. That's what's killing him.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I believe the same thing. Although again, they never tell us.
Right. But I think that, given the fact that his healing factor has slown, is that a cause of the adamantium in his skin, or is that just part of aging? And because of that, any other person to having adamantium infused to their skeleton would have died from the process because they don't have the healing factor. So I think it's more of a chicken and egg thing. Is it the adamantium that's causing him to lose his healing factor, or is it, him just losing his healing factor and the adamantium is going to kill him? Either way, he's dying, and he knows that. Which is why he has been, self-medicating with like a ton of alcohol. And, we've seen throughout the movie is that, that's his way of coping with the pain of him losing his healing factor and slowly dying. And so we find that out. Here's where we find out that Laura actually can talk. Mostly she mostly communicates in Spanish.
Mostly.
Which makes sense, obviously it was Mexican facility that she was in. And she convinces him to take him to Eden, even though he believes that there's no way there's anything there. It's just a thing made up in comic books. And so they finally get there. He, barely makes it, but they do get there. And sure enough, all of her, comrades are there, and they actually nurse Logan back to health with this green stuff that is
something that they took or
Yes.
that uh, Pierce gave them, right? Or
Yeah. And I
not
think what
Pierce, but the doctor.
that's Pierce, not Pierce. You're right. It's what's his name?
Sorry, I'm
Rice.
drawing
Rice. Not
Rice.
Pierce.
Yes,
Yeah.
Price.
So anyway, that I think what that is that it's kind of like what human growth hormone would be, but for mutants. So,
Right,
so
because he did use it on X-24.
yeah, yeah. So basically, it just enhances mutagenic ability. I think that'd be my guess. But anyway, he heals up. They're planning on leaving to the border. That the border's going to be open for them to move into Canada, where they can seek asylum. And it turns out that they do get they find out where they're at, the Transigen folks, and so they send them all to capture them. And this is where we have Logan's last stand essentially. And he takes the green stuff. That's where it took me out because Pierce mentions the green stuff. So watching it in black and white, it's like I didn't look like it was green to me when he took the medicine. So that's the only thing that took me out. The only thing, everything else was fine. And so he takes all of it to fight X-24, and he saves the day at the very end, but at the cost of his own life, because he realizes that I guess the way the medicine works is that it's like a one-shot thing, and that if he takes all of it at once, his healing factor is going to be completely shot at that point. And so,
Right. Once it's done, it's done.
right. And so he does that. He sacrifices himself for his daughter and for her friends, and they make it over. But they also pay respects to Logan by burying him, and with the cross. At the very end, she puts it
Turns
on
it
his thigh
sideways.
to make
Yeah.
it an X, and then at the very end, we get Johnny Cash's "The Man Comes Around" at the very end.
Oh, yes. Very powerful.
Yeah, I think it's a different mix. It seems to be like there's a little bit of extra reverb on Cash's vocals on that song, so I'm wondering if it's a different cut of the song,
Could
but
be.
I don't know. But anyway, that's pretty much the film, and like I said, I think it's a masterpiece. It's
Well, that we got a father-daughter time there as he was dying.
yeah,
That was totally tearjerker,
yeah,
and then we get her quoting Shane
right, yeah, that's right,
at the very end at his funeral, and then they all kind of just take off.
right,
So, but I thought it was a great ending
and
to the Wolverine saga.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we've seen other films where they've killed off characters and they've done it very poorly. I think of Last Stand; they just did a horrible job with it. And then here, you can kill off main characters and you can do it a extremely powerful way and have it mean something. I think of Guardians 2 as well with the death of Yondu. Same thing. There's ways to do it right, and I think this film is like the perfect example of that.
I would agree with that totally.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we didn't get any teasers at the end of this, did we?
What is there to tease? I mean, I guess you could say, we're going to follow what happens with Lara and her friends, but um,
Right. And
that's not what this movie's about. This was about Logan, and
yes,
so
exactly. So I think it told the end of the story.
yeah,
Uh, and honestly, I was sad to see it come to an end, the Logan saga. But he is getting older,
yeah.
so
In some ways, I would agree, but in other ways, this is the way to do it. I mean, we talked about how Steve Rogers' arc in the Infinity Saga was a very similar situation where, um, it's like you kind of do want to see a little bit more of Chris Evans doing Captain America, but in other ways, it's like, hey, actually, this was a pretty fitting ending. Same thing with Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Iron Man. Although there's hints of both of them coming back in some capacity here and there. So who knows what's going to happen on that? But
right. Well, there also I told you that we had heard at one time that Henry Cavill was supposed to play Wolverine. I think I had somehow got a note about that too. So
okay, It's possible, but
Yeah, there's all kinds of speculation all the time. You hear nonsense and truths and not truths.
yeah.
So, final battle, final part of the movie.
Yeah.
Anything that we didn't discuss that you want to go over, or
Yeah, I talked enough about all the stuff I wanted to talk about. The subplot with um, the food, the futuristic elements of it, the realistic elements of it, the ambiguity of the film. Um, yeah, everything about this movie is just fantastic.
I'm gonna say then. Well, I guess the only thing left is to rate it.
Yeah,
But I have a feeling that you're gonna be like me. I don't do this very often, but I'm gonna give this movie a 10.
oh yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. Like I said, I think this is one of the best movies ever made. Period, and it's
Right.
definitely one of the best superhero movies ever made. Um,
As
yeah,
opposed to when we get to New Mutants, where I think that when we rate that, it
yeah,
will be far from 10.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, but I'm going to tell our audience that it's going to be a long time before we get to New Mutants. I'll
yeah.
hold it off as much as I can for you.
Certainly, certainly. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, 10 for me, 10 for you. I think that's not really any surprise. Yeah.
Okay, so the only surprise for me will be where do you want to go next?
Yeah, so there's a couple things depending on release schedules. There were definitely, we think we should do a wrap up of Falcon and Winter Soldier when it concludes, which I think we got a couple episodes left of that. So once that's done, we'll go ahead and review the whole story arc and see what we think about it. So there's that. And then from there, I do think we need to move back to DC for a little bit, and let's talk about the Nolan Batman trilogy.
Oh, okay. I could do that.
Yeah,
I think I'd like that.
yeah,
There were some good acting in there.
yeah. In fact, the director, blanking on his name. What's his name again?
Michael Bay,
No, Mangold. This is
Mangold. Yes, this
yeah,
director.
well, yeah. He actually said that a lot of the inspiration for how he did this film was from the Dark Knight trilogy.
Okay.
So I
Well,
figured that would
good.
be a good connection that we can have, and yeah, I think that'll be good because that's
Yeah.
definitely one of the better DC outings. I think those films.
Really?
Yeah,
You like Christian Bale's portrayal of Batman?
actually, his portrayal of Batman is, I think, the least interesting thing about those films. I think maybe not the least interesting thing, but it's one of the lesser ones. Like to me, he does a passable job, and it's totally serviceable and fine. But I think what's going on in the films is way more interesting, and definitely the way that Christopher Nolan decided to direct some of the scenes, how he wanted to put the story together, and how he juxtaposes Batman against either uh, villains or Gotham. The interplay between that, I think, is way more fascinating.
Okay. Yes, definitely. And I think Fox in those series is done real well too.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could definitely. Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we have some ways to go.
Yeah. And I think we might actually, maybe not. I know that after that, we might be right up against Loki premiering on Disney Plus. So that would be the next thing, I
Yeah,
think.
I'm kind of looking forward to that. Well, and in between that, uh, we may have Black Widow too.
Well, I think Black Widow's July, right?
Oh, okay. I thought you said June.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, you know what? It's changed so many times.
Yes, it has.
We'll have to check that out.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, let's close it out there. Sound good?
Sounds great to me.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for another episode of Pop's Collection. If you have any feedback, drop us an email, popscollectionpodcast@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter, follow us on YouTube, and we'll see you next week with either Falcon Winter Soldier or Batman Begins. Goodbye and God bless.
Goodbye, God bless, and tell your friends.